Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison. Welcome to the 51 Animation Challenges. Specifically, this is the flower sack animation, where I've actually combined the last 3 or 4 different challenges in the basic category and just combined them all into one. Of course, there's more 51 animation challenges to do, a lot more actually, but this is just me combining a couple of them together. Now, this clip that's playing right here, I wanted to include this in with the video. You'll notice that characters keep popping in and out of existence. It's really irritating, especially since this problem was supposed to be fixed, where when you open up the file all over again, all of a sudden you've lost artwork. And this added an extra 45 minutes to me having to mess around with the animation and try to figure out what it is that I had originally and try to fix it so that I could actually post this video. Now, the fixed version is going to pop onto the screen pretty soon here. Now, it's little problems like this, not just the issue of losing artwork, but also the issue of the viewer not updating on a regular basis. I don't understand why that's a problem when it has never been a problem for me in the past. It's only something that's popped up within the last 2 to 3 months, and suddenly it's a huge problem inside of OpenToonz where I can't even see my animation as I'm making it, and I just have to keep struggling and struggling and struggling. So not only can you not see what you're working on the screen, but you can't even keep some of your artwork inside of OpenToonz. It's getting to be really irritating. Now, I love OpenToonz. I love the idea of it and everything like that. I think that tools like this should be available, especially for people who are not in a very good financial situation, but still need some sort of tools at their disposal. But most especially towards children who have parents that can't afford much. And as such, I'm thinking that OpenToonz will always be a part of my channel. I've said this multiple times. I plan on using it occasionally in order to animate things to see where OpenToonz is, and I do still plan on seeing how I can crowdfund or even fund the development of OpenToonz and such like that. So OpenToonz is going to continue having a presence on my channel. However, just like with the issue that I had with Krita, it's not quite full-featured. OpenToonz is full-featured, it's just the programming is a little bit clunky, a little bit dated. It needs to be updated, is what needs to happen with OpenToonz. But there are similarities between my problems with Krita and my problems with OpenToonz. But with Krita, I found the biggest bang for my buck. I found software that is very close to the quality and the feature-rich capabilities of Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, and all for $50 each. 2 different programs, $50 each. To me, that's a screaming deal. There's like literally nothing to lose there, and just about anyone is able to afford that. And in my point of view, there's no reason why you wouldn't get it, especially since Adobe has now adopted this 100% subscription limited licensing. And people keep telling me, oh no, you know, Adobe, they've actually opened it up. You can still purchase Photoshop. No, you can't. I've looked. You go onto the official Adobe website, you look, you can't. You can't buy any of the Adobe products. It's all subscription based at this point. So I don't know where people are looking in order to tell me, oh no, you can still purchase Adobe products. You can't. Not unless it's like Photoshop CS6. Okay? And even that's still ridiculously expensive. Now, just like with Krita, I'm planning on doing the same thing with OpenToonz. I'm planning on finding a program that is as inexpensive as humanly possible, but as feature-rich as possible. Just simply because I keep having so many problems with OpenToonz. Now, that isn't to say that you can't get good work done in OpenToonz. I'm just saying that it is buggy. It does have problems. I've never shied away from mentioning the problems with OpenToonz, but for free, you can't really complain too much. It's a free program. It's not like you can run around saying, hey, I want my refund. So I'm really happy that OpenToonz has progressed to the point that it's at, but at this point, I think that it would be most beneficial for me to explore other software, just simply because I think that having a well-rounded understanding of the software out there is probably the best thing for an animator. Now, whether or not you're ready to do that yourself or not, that's up to you and your situation. I don't know if my subscribers are following me because of a loyalty to OpenToons or whether or not they're following me due to a liking of my content in general, just the types of animations that I've been making and the types of artwork that I've been making. I don't know, but like I said, I still plan on backing OpenToons. I still plan on offering OpenToons news videos and occasionally animating with OpenToons as well, just not as often as I have in the past. Now, the specific software that I've been looking at this point in time, I'm not really quite sure if I'll necessarily buy it, but I've been looking at it. It's Kakani. It looks really interesting. It has tools oriented around auto in-betweening. Now, OpenToons has a lot of auto in-betweening tools, but not very many of them. And I think the execution is pretty limited inside of OpenToons. It's something that I've pretty much given up on in terms of its usage inside of OpenToons. I really don't have too much interest in trying out the auto in-betweening features in OpenToons ever again, to be honest. But Kakani seems to have this as their primary feature that they have to offer. And in fact, some studios have completely gotten rid of the need for an entire in-betweening staff so that they can just focus on the keyframes and have the computer do the rest. I think that's interesting. I'm thinking about getting the demo version. However, I've been looking at the specs for the software, and I'm going to have to get a better computer in order to do that. And unfortunately, that means it's probably going to take a little bit of time for me to try out the demo and to potentially purchase. It all depends on how much or if I even like the demo. But let's go ahead and talk about what's going on the screen so far throughout the video. So at the very beginning of the video, you saw me kind of playing around with a motion path and trying to play around with the curves on the function editor's graph. And that was a gigantic pain in the butt, and I actually completely abandoned it. That graph, something needs to be done about it. It's just way too convoluted, it doesn't make much sense, and it's really difficult for you to actually identify what it is that you're looking at. When you hover your mouse over one of the graph elements, it winds up telling you what it is, but why does it only tell you what it is when you put your mouse over that element on the graph? It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not the only person that feels this way. I've had a number of professional animators tell me that it's a complete and total waste of time to mess around with the graph on the function editor. So this just tells me that this is something that just genuinely needs to be fixed. I don't know how it needs to be fixed. Maybe I just need to use other animation software in order to get better feedback on how OpenToons can improve in this case. And this is something that also is a benefit. I've been thinking about using different animation software for a little while now, and I've actually just announced in this video right now that I'm thinking about using different animation software. This is not me abandoning OpenToons. This is me exploring other software to not just help myself, but also help OpenToons as well. But overall, throughout the entire experience of working on today's video, I did a really good job previously in making the animatic. And once you have the animatic, you have a lot of freedom to decide different little sub-gestures and such like that to give personality to the animation, and a lot of little last-minute decisions I feel you're allowed to execute in the animation, giving everything a heck of a lot of personality, and it's just fun. This was a fun project if it wasn't for the fact that OpenToons wound up losing about 10% of my work, and some of the time it just simply wouldn't play the animation. I tend to kind of think of the animation as a whole. It's not like there's one thing that needs to be finished start to finish, and then I can move on to something else. It's that I work up to a specific point until flower sack number 1 interacts with the ball, and then I start animating the ball up until it needs to interact with flour sack number 2. And then once it needs to interact with flour sack number 2, I start animating flour sack number 2 until they meet up. That's at least the workflow that I've been using. Now, this is an interesting part, what you're seeing right here. This is where I transition from a running cycle into sliding. Now, the animatic, next time I do an animatic, I'm thinking about having the animatic actually be somewhat animated with the animate tool and such, because I feel as though I could have just done traditional animation and had the character literally sliding across the screen a little bit. But instead what wound up happening was I created this pantomime as if he's sliding across the screen a bit. Instead of him sliding forward, he just stayed motionless and just pantomimed the gesture. This is me sliding. This is my pantomime of me sliding. And so I had to use the animate tool in order to slide him forward. Now, it turned out looking just fine. I don't think anyone would ever notice that that's what I did if it wasn't for the fact that I just mentioned it. The thing is that the animatic can oftentimes be a guide, and oftentimes it can throw you off if it's not exactly what you want. And so that's why I'm thinking about just drawing still images and somewhat animating them in motion with the animate tool next time I create an animatic. That way when I wind up animating it later on down the road, the animatic winds up being a little bit more of an accurate guide along the way. And I remember mentioning that I wanted to have the flour inside of the flour sack move up to the upper body of flour sack number 2 as he winds up sliding. Now, as I saw it, there were two different types of mental images that I've had in my head. Something subtle and something more like Looney Tunes. Now, people praise Looney Tunes for a lot of things, as it should receive a lot of praise. It was full animation in a televised episodic show, which is something that's actually kind of rare for a cartoon series. Limited animation is more along the lines where it's like 6 frames per second, which is very difficult to accomplish, and very difficult to accomplish in a way that is convincing and entertaining. So, 14 to 24 frames per second was what Looney Tunes was aiming after. In that sense, it needs big rounds of applause, without a doubt. And the way that it develops characters and the way that it develops stories and such like that, yes, it needs to be applauded for all of that. However, I just kind of feel like there's just some weirdness with some of the animations. It's as if the animator knew something was kind of funny, and so, like, if a Looney Tunes animator were to animate a flour sack and the flour moves up to the upper body, it would stay up there until the flour sack would be standing upright for something like 3 seconds, and then boom, it just bounced right down to the floor, to the lower portion of the flour sack's body, which is a huge over-exaggeration, all the way to the point to where it's not funny. And it's funny when it's something subtle, in my opinion. Looney Tunes is best when it's subtle, and so I thought, okay, well, people will be able to actually, see the subtleties of the humor that's going on inside of this little animation here. I don't know, something about this animation, the mischievousness of it, it just puts a smile to my face and I kind of chuckle a little bit. Just, flour sack number 2 is a little bastard. So, pretty soon here, you're going to see the flour sack number 2 go ahead and stomp his foot on the ball in order to prevent the ball from bouncing anymore. And I decided that his motion in doing that would be a lot like a hacky sack player. Just how he moves, and almost as if he's about to hit the ball with his knee. That sort of motion. And I think I tried to actually lift the leg a little bit higher than it needed to go. And once he actually stomps on the ball, you're actually going to be able to see that I actually did a little bit of squash and stretch. Now, every time that the ball squashes and stretches when it hits the ground, that's just something that happens with the ball. But once he stomps on it, it has another miniature squash and stretch, because it just seemed a little bit too jarring. A lot of times, new animators, including myself, oftentimes find themselves where they create a hold and it's just so jarring. It's just all of a sudden hold, and what you're seeing on the screen right now, that's the hacky sack pose, and that to me just looked awesome, and that gave me a little bit of a guide in order to move the motion along throughout the entire process of him stomping on the ball. These are the sorts of micro gestures that I was talking about, where you're able to just give the animation a little bit of personality and kind of figure things out. How do you give life to the character? This is a good way to do it with the least amount of hard work, in the sense that you don't want to just try to swallow everything all at once, like trying to swallow an entire elephant all at once. It's just not possible. So at this point, I started to do what I mentioned earlier. I went ahead and kind of just animated the miniature squash underneath his foot, and so that kind of created this miniature bounce under there. And the part where he starts waving at flour sack number 1, this is something that I actually struggled with quite a bit, trying to get the timing just right for the little motions, the little gestures and such like that. Ultimately, in order to get him to wave, I used 3 frames. I created a frame where his hand is to the left, and then I did kind of a motion blur frame, and then I created a frame where his arm was over to the right, and even still that seemed a little bit off, and so I started to kind of adjust his pose, his upper body's pose, just a little bit for each swing of the arm. But it's really minute and subtle, and I'm not really quite sure if it actually picks up, if people can actually see that. But I think that it really worked out in the long run. At least for me, it just seemed like it was a little bit less jarring. Not that it made a huge difference, but I think that people's subconscious will pick up on the difference rather than wondering what the hell is going on. It looks fake, that sort of thing. Just like with my subscriber drawing request series, the Sci-Fi Warrior Mouse, there's a part where I wound up saying that you're the artist, you're the one that ultimately has to say whether or not something looks like crap, and you need to figure out how to fix it. No matter how hard and how long you've been working on something, if it still looks like crap, it's you that needs to fix it. It doesn't matter how long it took for you to make it look like crap. You need to fix it, even if it means getting rid of a massive amount of content on the screen. The same rule applies with animation, in my opinion. If something just doesn't seem to work, it doesn't matter how long you've been working on it. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into it. If it looks like crap, it looks like crap. And you need to figure out a way how to fix it, whether it's with the principles of animation and such like that. If you need to have some follow through or overshoot the animation or something, or create some squash and stretch and such, then cool. Now, at this point in the animation, I adjusted some of the timing, just simply because all of the really intricate work with the ball interacting with flour sack number 1 and the ball interacting with flour sack number 2 was complete. All of the really super complex things inside of this scene are now finished, and so this allowed me to be able to decide that flour sack number 2 should have a few holds. He should pause here and there to put a little bit more gravity to variously different gestures and body language and such, so that things just don't seem like it's just moving all the time. And I'm still kind of figuring things out, so timing is still something that doesn't really quite come naturally to me. So yeah, of course I'm adjusting the timing here and there. The thing is that keyframes, for some reason, there's no way for you to anchor a keyframe to a frame. Even if you know for a fact that this keyframe should never be anywhere else than on this frame. If you adjust your timing even just slightly, or a lot even, then basically you could completely ruin your entire scene if you're not careful. So this is something that I think definitely needs to be improved with OpenToonz as well. Just the ability to anchor a keyframe to a frame on the timeline or the X sheet would just do wonders for an animation. Another thing is that I swear, the animation was looking pretty good when I saved it and closed the file, but when I went to open up the file in order to render it, not only were there frames missing, but for some reason some of the animation wasn't working properly because for some reason OpenToonz decided to move the keyframes. Now, after having reviewed the animation over and over and over and over and over again before saving and closing OpenToonz, I think it's safe to say that OpenToonz doesn't always remember the position of each keyframe, and then just makes it dance around all over the X sheet or timeline, which can get pretty frustrating, especially when you got everything just down perfectly down pat. Now, I don't know how to reproduce this problem, and I guess this makes it an opinion that I'm stating here, but I would say that it's such a strong opinion it's damn near a complete and total fact. Now, the last little bit of this video is me kind of animating the flour sack number 2, kicking the ball really freaking hard into the face of flour sack number 1. And there's a lot of very strong squash and stretch going on here, and I just love this part of the animation. It's probably the more humorous portion of it, even though, you know, don't do this at home, kids. Anyways, guys, this video is pretty dang close to wrapping up, so, you know, I asked a question earlier on, or at least I should have phrased it as a question. So I'm going to post it up here as a poll. Why do you watch my channel? Do you watch it because of loyalty to OpenToonz, or because you want to see the sort of animations that I make, or the artwork that I make, or something along those lines? Be sure to participate in the poll, because I am curious, what is it that gravitates people to my channel and such like that? Because I do hesitate with variously different decisions just simply because I don't know why the majority of you guys are watching me, and that not knowing kind of influences me in variously different ways. Gets me indecisive. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys didn't like it, please like, share, and subscribe anyways. And if you guys would like to take a look at any of my other videos, feel free to click on any of the videos that are appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.